Narrated Asma bint Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with her. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Do not shut your money bag, otherwise Allah too will withhold His blessings from you. Spend in Allah's cause as much as you can afford." Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So what I like about this hadith in particular, in this book of Sahih Bukhari, the summary, I also have the individual volumes, but I also have a big old chunky volume. It was one of my first Islamic books, actually, of hadiths, that is. And I've read it so many times, and when this one comes across my eyes, I think about misers, about how much good there can be in society if people spend it in a halal way. And when somebody is profusely cheap and selfish, this really damages society. Doesn't mean you're a spendthrift in that you're irresponsible with the money you've been given. You don't want to have a check and then blow it within a couple of days, right? You want to stretch it, make it last, and make sure that you have some left for your expenditures. But when you are uplifting people, someone needs new shoes, like a little kid for school. I remember one time I volunteered in the classroom of one of my coworkers who was a teacher, because I needed to fulfill an honor society requirement. And there was some children there where you could tell they need some help. One little boy's toe was sticking out of his shoes, and I was like, wow, I wish I could do something. At that time, I didn't have much myself. But today, I think I'll do what I can where I can, and you have to be careful how you do it so people don't feel offended. You know, some people, they are, you don't want to make them feel like losers. So there has to be a context where you do it where they feel like they still retain their honor. But giving to little tots is a blessing. Giving to children in particular, I think, is adorable because they're usually the most appreciative. And you can also think about, when you look at this hadith, the elderly. A lot of them need a new mattress. They need their mattress flipped. Whatever you can do to improve the life of people who are loving, dignified, honorable, wholesome, I think we should do that. And notice here, like, do not shut your money bag, otherwise Allah too will withhold His blessings from you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't reward the cheap. Now, what's fascinating is you have a lot of people who they're filled with envy. So they attack other poor fellows or people who are poorer than them and need food aid. You see this a lot with, my taxes pay for this, and in reality that person's only making maybe 60K a year, 70K a year, and that person that they're degrading makes 30K. You're not really too far away from them in the social ladder. But you'll notice that if you pay attention to the right-wing rhetoric, they really mock people on food stamps when the government shut down for over a month, which I believe at this time is the longest shutdown in U.S. history under the Trump regime. And I covered videos how MAGA was saying we need to totally gut SNAP and EBT, which is the food programs. And they get so angry when they see like a black woman dancing because she got some food. And like, she's happy. She's appreciative. She should be happy that she's got some food for her children. I don't see what's wrong with it. But they get furious. And then they say, we ought to gut it to just rice and beans and chicken. And I'm like, hey, that sounds good to me. It's pretty much what I eat a lot. But they don't want you to have soda or chips. You know, common little cheat days, you call it. And you see how they want to withhold a lot. And they have this sort of penalization where they want to penalize and nitpick, henpeck as much as possible. So a sort of nanny state. Like, oh, you can get this, but you can't get that or that or that or that. And it becomes a bit excessive at times. Especially when America has fast food commercials all over the TVs, even in the hospitals. And when I was growing up, there was vending machines of junk food in the schools. You know, and you weren't cool if you didn't have a bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Now it's Takis. But there was a thing then, or Pepsi Blue or Mountain Dew Code Red. You know, there was a status thing to it. So it's hard for people to break from that conditioning once they're poor. Because there was just something about junk food being a status symbol amongst the poor when the elites look at those who eat that slop as just cattle that should be euthanized. It's quite fascinating. That's why when countries are like, yeah, we'll let in McDonald's, American tourists are like, well, it must be safe since they're McDonald's, but the people who are there making homemade food should look at McDonald's as just a cancer-generating machine. So what I'm trying to give you here is a full spectrum picture of when you feed the needy, clothe the needy, you're spending in a good way that Allah approves of. And if we don't do it as believers and we only leave it up to the government, that becomes a problem because the Magatardian Republican Christian, especially the white supremacist Christian nationalists, they want to gut it so to bones dry. If they could delete those programs overnight, they would, even libertarians for the most part. So this means that we as Muslims have to step up and do what we can, where we can, within our capacity. Remember the hadith that talks about in Riyadh Salihin how if you are given the gift of a sheep's hoof, to not look down upon it. Now, a lot of Rachel Wilson, for example, Andrew Wilson's wife, had made a post where she was mocking cursed chicken feet because Latinos utilize chicken feet. And I was commenting on how utilizing every aspect of the animal is really good, and then how the Chinese actually get a lot of collagen from chicken feet. So, and also the Native American food philosophy of waste not, want not. Okay? You eat the organs, you eat as whatever is okay and edible, and you make it work. Like cow stomach, they make the soup menudo, which is absolutely delicious. They make it on Saturdays and Sundays. Cow stomach, tripe, also called, I believe, isn't really part of the American diet. And so you'll see Americans often waste a lot of what is a part of the cow. You know, if you think about it, what they sell in the store, it's sometimes hard to get organ meats. I like beef heart. It's irony, and it can be tough, but if you trim it up and you put it in a nice mushroom barley stew, it turns out real well. But Latinos make cow tongue tacos. If you try to tell the average American, cook up this cow tongue, they wouldn't know how to prepare it. And you're like, wow, it's a privilege to not know how to cook different things. Because you're always able to choose the beef tenderloin, the beef ribs, the ribeyes, the skirt steak, chuck. You're always able to get the easy cuts. The Chateaubriand, the Shatterbrand, some call it. There's different London broil. There's different cuts. But the organs, like you, for example, in Iran, I was watching a travel vlog. They had sheep's head for sale. I watched Uncle Rule, the Chinese chef. He's cooking up all kinds of animal heads. Cow, pig. We can't eat pig, but you get it. Duck heads, like subhanallah, he's making broth, he's doing something. Okay? And when you're hungry, you're going to utilize everything. And people who utilize everything, when you give them some money from your money bag, they're going to stretch it far. Some people know, like, hey, we're in dire straits, but we can make this work. Whereas other people, you give them a bag of potatoes, and they're like, what am I supposed to do with this? And you're like, you don't have an imagination? I want it to be already cut and seasoned. I don't want to make nothing. Like, you get a little bit of lazy and entitlement stuff, energy going on. So, withholding from the wrong people is fine. But when we see somebody who is honorable and is doing the best they can with what they have, and you can give them a leg up, that's great, you know? Because how could we want blessings for ourselves when we don't bless others? My husband works 3 jobs and has 3 side hustles. Because, I mean, now, you know, just rent is $2,000 a month. Life is expensive in California, but there's a lot of good things about California. Inflation's up. You know how fiat currency goes. I don't have to tell you. But what's fascinating is when a customer will tip him, and how there's been times in life where I was nervous and like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to afford that? Like, the refrigerator is getting pretty trim here. Slim pickings. And a customer will give him an extra tip, and you're like, wow. Wow, that's great. And then when someone gives extra, I'm able to give extra too. There's been times where, you know, oh, I gotta get this or that. And you look at the prices of things a lot, like, okay, ooh, this is intense. And then someone comes through with, like, joining my blog or something. So that's wonderful. And then when I see someone who needs help, when I want to do something kind for someone who's done kind things for me, it's like you're able to give it when you got it. And I think that mentality of give and re-give, it's like a cycle. It's like a recycling charity in a way, right? You keep that energy about you, and you don't forget your status. I was thinking a lot about Nick Fuentes and Tim Pool and Patrick Bet-David, people who lacked money, then got it, and how arrogant they became. And then you look at Andrew Tate. He supposedly didn't have money growing up, now has money, and is so arrogant and off-putting that you're like, you think you're, like you're trying to motivate people to work hard, but you're coming off as a pompous, smug jackass. And it's, who can be motivated by that? Haughtiness is not an Islamic value. And I made a video on, I don't know why people didn't comment. It had over 1,000 views, but I don't know why no one comment. Strange. But people don't really comment that much anymore. But he mocked affordability. People who were complaining that Republican Christians don't focus on affordability enough. And that was in remarks to Trump, like when he was having a press conference, Donald Trump, saying he didn't want the house-owning class to lose value in their homes if they were to make it more affordable to sell. And, you know, he is not really going to do much for the housing market, he said. And this has become a point of contention. And affordability is what Zohran Mamdani ran on in New York City. And this has resonated with people. And what do the Republican Christians say? Oh, that's socialism. So notice the whole spectrum here. A lot of American tension is coming around affordability. You have quite a lot of selfishness and envy in the American people's hearts. And you have immigrants who, they're more tight with their family. Multiple generations in a home. They send money back to Mexico, like they're tight-knit. You have more divided families here in America, where the boomer generations are more tight with their wallet, and they don't really care about passing much on to the millennials or their children or grandchildren. They're more selfish, going on cruises and gambling in casinos. And this has actually become a meme. And then there's also memes where the boomer class bought and hoarded like figurines, Beanie Babies, trinkets, things that don't actually gain value. And then when they died, they think that's going to be their kids' inheritance when they're just having a garage full of junk. and now that person has to pay to put that stuff on eBay. Another man's trash is another man's treasure, but that's not a replacement for like money to actually help them, right? To get a foot in the door, especially in this housing and job market, especially with AI on the rise. So when you look at all these different examples of like, how could we as American Muslims in particular make sure that we spend in Allah's cause, we're not being misers, we're being charitable. We can look around at all the failures of society and be different than the norms that we have right now. And to break that boomer mentality, but to also know where to give money, because we're catching more and more charities being totally corrupt. So, we can look to our own surroundings, own community, and make changes where we can. Oh, plant a tree here, help this student pay for tajweed lessons, or tip this Quran teacher who dedicates so much time for free. Let's give them a gift. You know, whatever it is that you can do. And also this reminds us, as much as you can afford. Let's say someone only gives you $5. Someone gives you $2 even. That literally may be all they have. So don't belittle it, don't look down on it. So you can see this as twofold. You know, we have to appreciate what is given to us and not be greedy. And we also must be giving when we have it. And also, when we're pinched, we still have to find a way. Remember, smiling at your fellow believers, charity. Giving even half a day in charity. We do what we can where we can. And to give from what you love. It's not easy to let go of money. There's something about it where you see, like, let's say someone who's never had cash before, they have, let's say, $200. And they could give a $10 tip, but they're like, maybe I'll just lower that to like $1.50 because they want to be cheap. You know, there's some times where the scarcity mindset takes over. And you have to be very cautious of that. Because if you start being too cheap, then it gets backfired. But you also have to be careful, like, discretion, I think, also when you open up your money bag. Because if you are seen as an ATM, people will make up excuses left and right to drain you of your resources. And we have to be mindful of that. For example, like one time, like when my mom was having a conversation with my uncle about how I'm Muslim. He's the only person in the family who like really has money. And he was not happy that I converted to Islam. And I told my mom, well, are you going to talk to him and explain like what I believe and how I'm studying and everything? She's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she was like defensive because she asks him for money. So she wants to stay on his good side so that he can give her money. That's a bit of a manipulation thing of my mom. It's like, yeah, but I'm your kid. Shouldn't you defend me to your brother, to my uncle? You know, like stick up for me? But she's like, I don't want to be bothered. But my mom has that because she was a former drug addict. She has, and an escort, stripper, she has that hustler mentality of always milk a resource. And see, my mom doesn't call me because she knows I won't give her money. I'll give her actual food. And then sometimes I get angry, like, why do I have to feed my mom when she's able-bodied and young enough to work? She should be helping me with with her grandchildren, but she hasn't sent them anything. But again, I digress. But the point is that, like, she would ask me for money for perfumes, cigarettes, stupid things, money to get her eyelashes done, dumb things. But if I were to send her a big old Costco-sized bag of basmati rice, she would see that as like I'm being cheap, when in reality that can feed you for a long time as a side dish, right? Not as a main component. I mean, Japanese, Chinese, Arabian people, there's so many Mexicans, Latinos essentially. A lot of people utilize rice in their cuisine. So when you're on dire straits, you've got rice, beans, scrambled eggs. Like, I can think of so many things I've made with rice. Rice is literally a lifesaver, quite literally. Fills you up when you don't got much, and it lasts a while. But to her, it's like, oh, if you really love me, you should be buying me a nice perfume. And it's like, I can't afford that, but I can afford to give you, a bag of kidney beans and some cartons of chicken stock. But see, that is healthier and better, but that's not what she thinks is important. She would rather eat terribly and have fancy things. And so you can't give people money who think like that, in my opinion. If I gave her 60, she would spend it on cigarettes and try to find something, a new clothing thing or something that she doesn't need. And then complain there's no food in the fridge. So again, being responsible with who we give money to and how we can give, people meat if they're suspect, because some people, they're very devious. And like, if you know someone's an alcoholic and you give them $20, chances are they're going to go buy a 6-pack of beer. They're not going to buy a nice deli sandwich with a bag of little chips or something, right? They'd rather be hungry and have alcohol than have a nice little lunch and no alcohol. So instead, you buy the food for them, and it forces them to eat, you see? So, even though we're not responsible, if we give money to somebody and then they spend it badly and without our knowledge, we're not held liable for that, but you also can't enable if you know that person is, they have an inclination towards that sin, that bad habit. So, this is really important. And I remember how much I hated my stepdad because he was so cheap. And my mom used her welfare card to buy food, and I was working after high school at a place called Crown Chicken on 56th and Girard in Philly. And I also worked as a fry cook at McDonald's. So I would buy my food from the Chinese corner store, which was delicious. Never had Chinese food that good. Oh, I miss it sometimes. It was so good, man. Man, so good. Affordable, but just real. Made by real Chinese immigrants. And I buy my own food, And that hatred I felt towards him was strong. Because he had the wealth, but he would spend it on beer. And you could argue, oh, well, you weren't his biological kid, so he ain't got to feed you, but technically we're under his authority, living in the 1-bedroom apartment, and food is important, and the way he just was so cheap. I would say may Allah curse him, but I don't know if we're allowed to say that. Wouldn't he, a wicked man. But I think about that often. So food is a very sensitive topic for me. Always has been, because people fed me from their homes. And there were times where I literally was just waiting on people to feed me because I was, I left home at a fresh age at 17. And my grandma didn't really cook. And so I didn't need money from people, but I did need food and sometimes a place to shower. And people not judging me in that sense and helping me, I remember that. And if someone needs me and I'm able to help, I like to give that back. And if they're a good, deserving person who's not gonna, take advantage of me or whatever. But this hadith, I think, is important. Because being giving, having a very giving soul with the right people, really does help people who you might not expect. Tipping culture has gotten out of hand to a certain degree in America, but at the same time, let's say you're in another country and tipping culture isn't huge, but you're able to do it. And you can really, change someone's day with that. Really can. So don't look too down on people. That's what I'd say. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and join the blog.